Hey you guys, and welcome back. So I wanted to do this video because I've seen there's been new, fresh conversation concerning the Straightway Church and their quote-unquote pastor, Pastor Dowell. He is someone who I had done a few videos on a couple years back. And this was during a time where I was trying to wake the daughters of Zion up about the men or the males that they were choosing to follow. And I remember one of the videos that I did spoke about there was some community, I can't remember if it was in Africa or if it was over in the present day land of Israel. I think there was a community over there, and it was talking about how the women over there, away from the system and the influence of the man, of the white man, the community over there, they were having a lot of issues with the men being involved in polygamy, and they were not able to take care of the families that they were creating, and they were mistreating the women and the children, and they were just doing a whole bunch of foolishness. And I had spoken about that because the women, once they had been sufficiently dogged out by the men to where they just couldn't take it anymore, then they left the community, and they not only left the community, but they stopped being believers in the Most High. Right? They went into, lesbianism and atheism and all these other alternative spiritual practices and things of that nature. And at the time, that was very concerning to me because I felt like if it had not been for these men taking advantage and misusing the Most High's word in order to do these things, then maybe those sisters wouldn't have fallen into those traps. And so that was one of the things that I did on my older platform, is that I did a lot of videos speaking to the daughters of Israel to try to get them to understand that there is a distinction between what the Most High says versus what these carnal, fleshly men are saying and doing in His name, by the way. And I want to take this time to break away from that right quick and just repent for some of the things that I used to say on my channel, because when I was doing these videos and I was hearing people talking about the Great Tribulation and how our people need to prepare for the Great Tribulation, I would say, absolutely positively everything that could be done to human beings have been done to our people. We have been skinned. We have had babies cut out from stomachs. We've had babies fed to alligators. We have had our body parts cut off and saved as souvenirs and sold, and we've been cannibalized and all these horrible things that no other group of people have gone through. And so I was like, well, what more could possibly happen? We've gone through all these things. What else could possibly happen? What could possibly be worse than going through the worst that any other group of human beings have gone through? And in my ignorance, I was asking that question because I hadn't really fully understood that, yes, we may all be of the same blood. We may be all in the same bloodline, but we are not in the same groups. We are not on the same paths. You have some of our people who are in what's called the awakening, and they are genuinely doing and trying to do what the Most High will have us to do. Then you have those of us who are in the awakening, but we are just in the awakening for what we can get out of it. We're looking the part on the outside, and we're following the outside things to try to get people to view us in a certain light, but that's not what's actually genuinely in our hearts. Then you have those of our people who are still of the bloodline. They are still our people, but they are out in the world. They out there boogie woogie oogieing with Satan himself, just carefree and footloose, right? So all of us are not in the same groups. We're not on the same paths. And so when these things start to happen, different groups of our people will be experiencing different things. They're no less our people. They're no less within the same bloodline. They are just on different paths, and they're in different groups, and they've made different choices for their lives. And so it's important to understand that the Most High is looking at our hearts. We can only see the outside, and we maybe sometimes can tell a little bit about a person by their actions, but even that can be misleading because they may be doing something to make themselves appear a certain way, but that may not be what is genuinely in their heart. And we don't have the ability to see another person's heart, what's in their heart, okay? And so back to the sisters, the women. When you talk about the parable of the wheat and the tares, right? When the wheat and the tares are young and they've already started to sprout up and grow, they look so similar. They look alike. They look the same, right? Until they start to grow up and mature, and then you can tell the distinction. Then you can tell the difference. Then you can see the difference. So, and that's what I used to always say to the sisters is, to stop looking at these men and trying to place that onto the Most High. And I think that was a part of my blind spot, is that many of the sisters, especially those who are in these camps that are saying these things and who are in error, who are, being a problem, many of those sisters, they value the man more than they do the Most High. And so they're there in that awakening, in that group, in that camp, for the men and not for the Most High. So when the man or the men or whoever sufficiently dogs them out, then they walk away completely because their heart was never with the Most High. And so that in and of itself is a part of the separation of the wheat and the tares. Because the Most High looks at the heart, and he knows the hearts of those people who are genuinely following him and genuinely after him versus after man or after a man or after men. And so when many people saw, which, what's been happening at Straightway is something that's been happening. Me and some of the other sisters had been trying to call it out. For the most part, the men just didn't care. I'm not saying none of them cared. Some of them did, but most of the men didn't care because it had to do with the women. So they just ignored it. And that's another thing. That's another problem that I may discuss in this video or another as it pertains to our people. Because so many of the people who are, the leaders in the awakening are the men. And so the men have a blind spot when it comes to the women and the children. But when you read the word, a lot of what the Most High got onto us about before we got exiled or sent into punishment was the level of violence amongst our people. It wasn't the violence of the people outside. It was the amount of violence within the community, within the family, the lack of love, the lack of justice, the lack of mercy. These are the kind of things that just tired the Most High and just sent us into punishment because we had that going on within the assembly, within the family. And so now you listen to all of these men, the leaders of the assembly, the leaders of the awakening. And when it comes to the daughters, no matter the brutality, the violence, the slaughter that is taking place at the hands of the men who are supposed to be the leaders and protectors of the community, they just never seem to see it. They turn a blind eye to it, while at the same time hoping and praying that the Most High is going to come get us and rescue us. But we still have the same mindset, the same kind of lack of love, the lack of empathy, the lack of compassion, the lack of justice amongst our people that our ancestors had when the Most High punished them and kicked them out. But we still looking for and expecting for the Most High to come get us and rescue us. But we refuse to deal with the in-house stuff because we're so focused on what these people have done to us, which, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't acknowledge that. But, and this is something that I used to say, and I still believe is true to this very day, is that if any one of these other nations had the kind of covenant and relationship with the Most High that our people have. And if we were making ourselves an enemy and doing the same things to those people that they have done to us, we as a people would have been gone. They would have already repented. They would have acknowledged what's going wrong amongst our people. They would have done whatever needed to be done to try to get the Most High to move on their behalf. We would already be gone. We would already be gone. But our people just refuse to acknowledge the things that are going wrong in-house. And it starts with the leaders, because the majority of the stuff that is happening is because the leaders, the men, refuse to acknowledge the wickedness, the evil, the carnality that's causing so much destruction within our own nation. And that goes for the women as well, because the women follow the men. Even if the men are out here saying some of the most craziest, filthiest, most carnal, most evil stuff out here, you still gonna have the women who provide cover, who condone, who turn a blind eye, who will still support. And then on top of that, they'll go after other women and try to get them to do the same. And even though, yes, as a daughter of the Most High, if you are his, you should know the difference between right and wrong. Whether you're talking about a woman or a man, you should know the difference between right and wrong. But if the men are going to go around pounding on their chest saying that they want to be the leaders, but every time you see one of your own or somebody who looks like you or another quote unquote brother who's just doing all out wickedness, you don't address it, you turn a blind eye, and you have people who are following you, you have women who are following you, then what do you expect the outcome to be for the whole assembly, for the whole community? If you condoning and overlooking wickedness, then the ones who are under you, they're going to do the same thing too. So you are leading them in a wrong path. You are leading them down the wrong path as a leader, as a head of the assembly, of the community, of the awakening. From the very beginning, when I first saw the camps and the assemblies, it just looked like Christianity 2.0 to me. All of it. It looked like Christianity 2.0 because the majority of those in the Hebrew Israelite community have an issue with Christianity and what the other nations have done to us. But they have no problem with those in our own midst who call themselves leaders and teachers and deacons and pastors and whatever else doing the exact same thing when it comes to the women and children. Those virgin auctions didn't just start taking place. That stuff didn't just start taking place over there. The filth and stuff, when I first got introduced to the Hebrew Israelite community, when I first saw them, you had the men on the street corners out in the open talking about how they could sleep with, i.e. assault, young girls as soon as they had their first period. They was on the street corners hollering and screaming about this, and the men in the other parts of the assembly just talked about how they're not gonna go against their brother, they're not gonna condemn their brother, they're not gonna argue with their brother, and all this other stuff. And I'm like, this is pure wickedness. This is pure filth. What do you mean you're not gonna call this out? You have no problem with calling out stuff when it comes to the women wearing weave or the women wearing a short skirt. A woman wearing a short skirt is not the same as somebody being assaulted or someone being unalived or their life being taken. What you mean you're not going to address it or condemn your brother? Your brother's doing filth. Your brother is doing filth. And you say you are a leader. You say you are a leader, a teacher, a moray, an apostle, a prophet. You say you all this stuff. You are a leader and a head, and you can't discern, you can't judge that what your brother is saying in the Most High's name is filth. One of the things I always said, and I still continue to say to this day, women have to be careful about who they allow to be the head of their household. Because if you got a man in your household as your head, as your husband, and he is filthy and he is wicked and he is carnal and he is evil and he goes out there and he does that to other people, you are subject to receiving that punishment on your head or the heads of your children, because the head of your household, who you condone and go along with and support, is out here doing wickedness. So that's the same thing as you condoning and supporting and going along with wickedness. You are a handmaiden of Satan. It don't matter how many times he says he's a Hebrew or how much he reads the Bible. Satan don't even need to read the Bible. He know it by heart. He was there when all that stuff was taking place. It used to really bother me and upset me that these women were being caught up and getting caught up in this. And it still bothers me to a certain extent. But you have to realize, and this is what I'm coming to the realization, is that these women are being led astray, not necessarily just through no fault of their own. They're being led astray because of something that's in their heart as well. That their heart really isn't after the Most High. Their heart is after a man. Their heart is after the men. And they put them in the place that should only be occupied by the Most High. And that allows them to be led astray. And that's unfortunate, especially when they have children in tow. I do feel sorry for our children and our little ones who are at the mercy of these carnal, wicked, evil, fleshly adults through no fault of their own. But these grown women who keep seemingly falling for this, they're not falling for it just innocently, because you as a grown woman, you know right from wrong. And just because somebody is putting a little Bible on it, how is that different from what you just left? Okay, you talking about the Christian church because they're using the Bible to lead people astray. Well, how didn't you learn your lesson when you left Christianity? How didn't you learn your lesson of what it looks like to use, abuse, pervert, twist the Bible, the scriptures, in order to lead you astray? How didn't you learn your lesson when you left Christianity? So our daughters in our community, in our nation, will never be safe as long as you have the wicked carnal men heading and leading the wicked and carnal women who worship their flesh and not the Most High. That's very upsetting. That's very painful. I used to ask, what did our children do to deserve to be raised in some of these households? I just could have never imagined some of the things that's going on, with these children in some of these households. I'm like, what's wrong? What's going on? How do you even get to where your mind is like this? You got so many women who are so desperate for a man that they just let them tell them any old thing, that they sacrifice their children to be in the company or to get a accolade or a pat on the head from one of these men. I'm just going to say this, and I know the sisters ain't going to like it, and of course the males are not going to like it, but I would not even think about trying to get married to anyone in this climate, especially not anyone who is involved in any of the camps. And this is why, even if they're not involved in the camps, because I have heard stories of women who get married married to men who are in the awakening, who are awakened to who they are. And then later on down the line, they decide to join a camp because whatever that camp is speaking, that rhetoric that they are speaking, speaks to who they are in their heart, right? And so then they go after the camps and they start joining in and they start talking about, all this polygamy and, woman, shut your mouth and this, that, and the third and all this other stuff. And now the monster has been unleashed and you are trapped. So I wouldn't look to be getting married in this environment because, again, this is the separation of the wheat and the tares. And some of these men that you may be marrying today may not be there tomorrow. They may not make it. I know a lot of women are scared and they want to hurry up and get married because they feel like if they have a husband, they'll have some protection. But it really depends on who it is you're really marrying in their heart, because they may wind up being the tares, and the protection that you seek really should be coming from the Most High, because as I've said before, even though you have genuine men who are protective of their families, those genuine men also have to go to work. Those genuine men also can't sit up under you 24/7, right? There's a limitation to the protection that a man can provide. Men get sick, men die, men run off, men leave, men crack up, men get on drugs, men become drunks, men become gamblers, because men are human. All right. So even if you have a man who has that desire, there's still a limitation to what he can do in terms of protection. And you can just look at what's happening with women nowadays. Most of the women who you see being trafficked and, snatched off the street and unalived, most of those women have male family members. They have boyfriends, they have husbands, they have fiancés, they have dads, they have brothers, they have uncles, they have cousins. And when you see some of the interviews, you get the idea that these male relatives genuinely love their female relative, but they just weren't there. They weren't there when she needed them. They weren't there in that environment. They weren't there at the time when she was hurt, harmed, or taken out. So you really should be ultimately, first and foremost, looking to your first love for your protection and your provision. And that's going to be the Most High. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I may do a second video on this because there's another issue that I wanted to specifically address based off an interview that I saw. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this short because this is getting rather long. So I'm going to go ahead and end this here. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe. I will be so happy to have you. You guys have a great day, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks.